Call this meeting of the State Board of Elections to order. First of all, I would request that any non-participants mute their lines. Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Chairman Brink.
Present.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon.
Here.
Ms. Chang. Here. Delegate Merrickx.
Here.
Secretary Alvis Long present.
We have a live quorum of 5 people. At the conclusion of today's we are joined today representing the department by Commissioner Beals, Joshua Leaf from the Office of Attorney General, and we're also very pleased today to have with us Lynn McDermott, the Secretary of Administration. At the conclusion of today's meeting, the board will go into closed session to receive the advice of counsel. Before going into closed session, the board will receive public comment on items not on today's agenda. Without objection, members of the public will be heard for 3 minutes and are welcome to submit statements for the record. Our first order of business is approval of the minutes from our meeting of July 5, 2022. Do the members have any corrections to the minutes as presented? If not, Secretary Alvis Long.
Yes, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the July 5th meeting?
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
I will now call the roll to approve the minutes of the July 5th meeting. Chairman Brink.
Aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon.
Aye.
Ms. Chang. Delegate Merrickx.
Aye.
Secretary Alvis Long, aye.
The motion is approved 5-0. Our next order of business is the Commissioner's report. Commissioner Beals.
Good afternoon, Chairman Brink, Vice Chair O'Bannon, and members of the board. Elect has been busy this summer and is actively preparing for the November 8th election. Some of the activities that we've undertaken this summer include making updates to our GREB handbook to reflect new legislative requirements. We have conducted day-long trainings across the Commonwealth for registrars and electoral board members this summer. We have implemented new legislation, including we now receive weekly reports of deaths from the Department of Vital Statistics when we previously received this information monthly. This allows us to send this information to local registrars who then cancel the deceased voter and remove them from the voter rolls. We also are working to provide absentee voting results by precinct for this November's election, which means that each voter who votes by mail or votes early will vote a ballot that is specific to their precinct. You're going to hear from our team today about upgrading our ballot standards to reflect this change. We have also developed the process for registrars to use for same-day registration, which is going to begin this fall. This is going to be a provisional process where the voter will register and vote, and their registration form and ballot will go back to the registrar's office to be researched to determine if they are eligible to be registered. Once the registrar makes that determination, they will then recommend to the electoral board whether or not to count that voter's provisional ballot when it is considered during the provisional ballot meeting in the week following the election. I wanted to alert you to some important upcoming dates. Early voting begins September 23rd. We're going to have 45 days of early voting, including the 2 Saturdays before the election. The last day to register to vote is October 17th. Voters can request an absentee ballot now at elections.virginia.gov for this fall's election if they would like. You go to that website and click on casting a ballot at the top of the screen, and that will allow you to request that online. And election day is November 8th, and polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. The offices on the ballot this year will be members of the U.S. House of Representatives. So you'll be voting for your member of Congress. And then in some localities, we will have some special elections for local offices in some cases. Finally, today is Help America Vote Day, which promotes poll worker recruitment, or as we call them in Virginia, officers of election. Officers of election are some of my most favorite people in the world. They are the ones who make elections work in Virginia. And it takes 15,000 officers of election to run an election in Virginia. These are folks who are committed and they are sworn and trained by our localities to run election day. Today, the U.S. Election Assistance Commission is promoting the recruitment of officers of election. If you are interested in helping to run elections in Virginia, you can sign up on our website at elections.virginia.gov and click on the banner at the top that says Work the Polls, and that will direct you to where you can sign up to be part of the process this fall. Thank you so much.
Do the members have any questions of Commissioner Beals? If not, the next item on our agenda is abbreviation of political parties' names on the ballot. Mr. Saunders?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. State Board of Elections at its meeting in August of 2021 approved party abbreviations until April of this year. The board's ballot standards, as they currently state that party abbreviations must be in accordance with the state board's determination made at the time of party order drawing. The board determined party order at the April meeting this year, yet we didn't do abbreviations when we probably should have in April. Therefore, staff recommends that the board vote to use the recommended and current abbreviations presented for general and special elections being held through April 30th of this year, or excuse me, of next year, in order to realign this determination with the determination of party order on the ballot. Happy to take any questions if there are any, Mr. Chairman.
Questions of Mr. Saunders? To be heard on this item? Entertain a motion that the board approve the staff's recommendation regarding party abbreviations.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve the party abbreviations as presented by staff for general and special elections being held through April 30, 2023.
Is there a second? Seconded that the board approve the staff's recommendation. Secretary will call the roll.
Yes. Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon,
Aye.
Ms. Chang, Delegate Merrick's,
Aye.
Secretary Alvis Long, aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Yes, sir.
Next item of business is revision of the board's ballot standards. Recently enacted legislation requiring the reporting of cap results by precinct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In conversations with general registrars and voting system vendors, it has been determined that best and easiest way to accomplish this legislative mandate is to produce a separate ballot style for each precinct. Previously, if all the contests and questions for multiple precincts were the same, one ballot style could be created and used in all precincts. However, that does not permit for separation reporting of election results by central absentee precinct by precinct. By creating a separate ballot style for each precinct, the voting systems can more easily be determined which precinct the votes cast for a single ballot can be allocated. Because each precinct will now have its own ballot style, it will help avoid confusion and assist general registrars, their staff, and officers of election for the precinct number and name to be clearly printed in the header of the ballot. This will help ensure that voters are given the correct ballot for each election. This change to the ballot standards would make a board requirement to include the precinct number and precinct name in the header of the ballot. The changes made to the current version are in the memorandum provided in the board's working papers, and staff recommends that the board vote to adopt the revised state board of elections standards and make them effective beginning today, August 16th, 2022.
Any questions? Questions of Mr. Saunders? Public wish to be heard on this item?
Hello, thank you. My name is Thomas Kasperek. I'm here as a private citizen. I'd like to understand the quality standards for making sure that the chain of custody is maintained with all this complexity. I would like to know what the quality standards are and what the type of documentation that's required to maintain chain of custody for these all these different ballot styles, and how that's maintained, and how the citizens can be guaranteed that that this process is not open to nefarious activities. Yes, sir.
best thing to do for us to interface with Mr. Saunders and answer your question.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to be heard? If not, I'll entertain a motion that the board approve the revised ballot standards.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board adopt the revised State Board of Elections ballot standards and make them effective as of August 16th, 2022.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the revised ballot standards. Secretary will call the roll.
Yes. Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon,
Aye.
Ms. Chang, Delegate Merrick's,
Aye.
Secretary Elvis Long, aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our next item of business is 2 cases involving the stand by your ad provisions of the code. Ms. Alexander?
Good afternoon, Chairman Brink, members of the board. How are you today? I have, as you've so rightly said, I have only brought you 2 today. That's all we have. They are both pretty simple. So we're gonna, oh, thank you. All right, she tells me I have a clicker. Thank you. Look at us all getting fancy like this. Okay, so again, this is Stand By Your Ad. We have 2 items. We have Jackson for Roanoke and Velosin for Roanoke, or Velosin. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Again, today with Stand By Your Ad, we determine if an ad actually is a Stand By Your Ad before we bring it to you, and if there's express advocacy. So we have, excuse me, I'm thinking, I'm flipping here. Our first penalty would be $100 for anyone in the General Assembly or statewide office, but we're not dealing with any of those today. We're going straight to local offices, where it's $50 per the first time for a violation for SBYA, or $100. And if it's in the 14 days before an election, it is doubled. And if you guys agree unanimously, and since these are both people who've come before the board for the first time, you can unanimously decide to make it a $25 penalty, and that's it. So today, the most important thing we want to notice is, let's see, no other candidate mentioned in ad is paid for by John Doe. That will be our first item we'll be discussing. The second one will be another candidate mentioned who did not or who did approve the ad. We're not sure which way it goes. I was not told either way on that. So our first one is Jackson for Roanoke. Mr. Jackson has no disclosure on the 2 signs that are presented. The complainant is from Barbara Andes. He just says the 2 signs, this violation happened on June 30th, so it was after the primary, which Mr. Jackson wasn't in, but he is on the ballot in November, so he's outside the 14-day limit. And do we have, now we would, if anybody is here to speak for Mr. Jackson, I have heard nothing from him.
Good morning or good afternoon. Am I able to speak?
Are you getting someone? Is that Mr. Jackson?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much. This is certainly glad that this was brought to our attention. However, there's certainly a oversight that we did catch early on in our campaign. There were only a few signs that we had printed that were printed incorrectly. Unfortunately, those signs did go out during our campaign launch. We were receiving misdirection and information from the Democratic Party in regards to what was needed for the signs. As I've been to this meeting before, it was my desire to run as a Democrat. However, because one document was incorrectly dated or had information on it, I was not able to run as a Democrat. So information that we were receiving was very conflicting, and it was an oversight. However, this issue has been corrected and was corrected immediately, even before the violation date of June 30th. It was actually corrected back in April, and new signs are going out, have gone out. These signs, it was just a few that had gone out, and because we did not know exactly where those signs were, we were not able to go out and correct those signs. But it is an issue that we are certainly trying our best to correct immediately whenever we find that there is a sign that does not have the correct disclaimer on those signs. So I'm a new candidate and still learning this process. So I thank you for hearing me and hope that you would show me a little leniency and a little grace today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Does anyone else wish to be heard on this item? Do the members have any questions, any comments or questions of Ms. Alexander about the Jackson for Roanoke? Stand by your ad. Question? Ms. Alexander, so our options are,
You can give a $100 penalty, that would be $50 times 2 for each of the violations. Or if you unanimously vote that this has not caused harm, you can go with a $25 flat penalty. I would suggest, my recommended motion is the 25.
now, did you say that Mr. Jackson was not on the
He
ballot?
was not on the ballot in the primary in Roanoke, but he is going to be on the ballot in November.
Understand. All right, thank you. All right, does any member have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we assess a $25 civil penalty on the basis of the information provided.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that the board assess a $25 penalty. This requires a unanimous vote. Secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink,
I vote aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon, Ms. Chang, Delegate Merricks.
Aye.
Secretary Alvis Long, aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second is Velosin for,
Lawson for Roanoke.
All right.
He had numerous complaints lodged against him. In total, there were 10. They all boiled down to these 5 particular ballots. We have 2 with no disclosure whatsoever. Those would be numbers 1 and 5 on the left and the right. Numbers 2, 3, and 4 came in 1 complaint, and they do have disclosure, but it's an inadequate disclosure. It should say paid for by Velocin for Roanoke, authorized or not authorized by the other candidates who are listed on the ballot. This happened on Election Day, so penalties will be doubled. And again, if you feel no harm has taken place, you can do $25, and then we can double it for being within the 14 days. And I have, we do have, Ms. Tyson tells me, and Ms. Adele Carlos is here to speak.
okay.
When you're ready for that, sir.
Do the members have any comments or questions of Ms. Alexander about Velosin for Roanoke? If not, the individual who wished to speak on this is,
I believe it's Adele Carlos. She is one of the complainants. Is she online?
do we find her in the queue?
Ms. Tyson says she's not present.
All right. In that event, is there any other member of the public who wishes to be heard on this item? Okay, once again, our options are,
There can be a $500 penalty, which is the $50 for each of the 5 ballots and double due to the timing, or you can do the $50 if that's a unanimous decision that no harm has been done to the public with this, with these sample ballots.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to assess $50, so with penalty.
It's been moved to assess a $50 penalty. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that the board assess a $50 penalty. The secretary will call the roll.
Yes. Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon, Ms. Chang,
Aye.
Delegate Merrick's, Secretary Alvis Long, aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Does that conclude stand by your ad for August?
That's it.
All right,
Just brace yourself. It's already stacking up for January, though.
all right. Thank you, Ms. Alexander.
Thank you. Barbara Andes is the complainant on both of the cases that came before you today.
All right. Even though we've passed this item, I think we should hear from her.
She was also a complainant. Yep, Barbara was also one. She was a Velocin.
Miss Catherine, you would need to unmute yourself.
Is this Ms. Greenberg?
You want to take the screen over?
I am on. My note was a hand was raised in the group, not that my hand was raised. And I think that was Barbara's hand that was raised.
Barbara Andes was the complainant
Oh,
for
all
both
right.
of the both Jackson and Velocin.
Okay.
Miss Barbara, if you're still on the line, if you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Here you go, James.
Next item is adoption of ballot on demand system certification standards. Ms. Hoyt Stewart?
Good afternoon, Chairman Brink and members. We bring before you, and hopefully received in your packet, your ballot on demand certification standards. In September of 2019, the state board adopted a new voting system standards. And in 2020, the code was changed so that we had early voting absentee. Now in 2022, the code has been changed again under sections 24.2-101 and 24-2.2-667.1. And it changed The definition of voting systems to include the ballot on demand system is considered under that. In addition, it changed how our ballots are going to be printed, which is by precinct. The code requires the localities will have to provide every precinct ballot style at every early voting locations. The ballot on demand system is a solution to provide every precinct ballot style in every early voting location. Starting July 1st of 2022, the ballot on, and this is what we're proposing, the ballot on demand systems must be certified to be used in operation in the Commonwealth of Virginia elections. Do you have any questions, or this is, like I said, this was sort of put on us since the change of the definition. So we have standards. It's going to be a little bit different process because there are no voting systems voluntary guidelines from the EAC. There are no guidelines on ballot on demand systems. So we're going to be doing a state testing system, and we're not going to be, we're going to be doing that on site. There are different ballot on demand systems throughout the localities, throughout the whole state of Virginia. Different vendors, different systems, but we have to certify every system, variety of every system. For example, we have some systems that have poll books that then create the ballot, some that just do laptops to print the ballot, but we have to test the ballot printing, we have to test the systems, how they connect, and we also have to test the scanners to make sure they're going to read and they're going to show results. So we have to do all that, and we have to do it all before early voting starts on September 23rd. So just so you know. So if you could make a motion to, I mean, we worked really hard on these, so.
We appreciate that. I have a question. How many, do you have a number on how many different ballot on demand systems there are?
There's a minimum of 6 different systems, but then there's the older systems too. And we're going to certify the old systems and the new systems. We have so far we have 4 or 5 vendors that have providing systems, but then we have the older systems too that have to be certified too, to the same standards. Now, and you know, I've used the ballot on demand systems since 2000s, so they're a known product and it's a known deal. But however, this is our new rule. This is our new direction. We have to certify them to make sure that they function correctly.
Members have any comments or additional questions of Ms. Hoyt-Stewart? Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this item?
Yeah, I just have a question.
Would you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is James Jones from Henrico County.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm just curious, once these BODs are certified, how do we maintain a count of all the ballots that are going to be printed by the BODs? You know, when we use our paper ballots, we know we start with X amount, we end up with X amount. That's what we used. Where is the count of ballots tabulated in the BOD system?
Yes, that's part of the BOD system. It will give a precinct count of each ballot style, which now it'll be precincts. So if they print 23 of ballot style 1, which is precinct 1 or 101, it will say 23. And it'll keep tabs of all the ballots and how many were done, but daily. We'll do a reconciliation on a daily basis. In addition, the stock will be kept chain of custody on all the blank stock. So they'll probably get those in packets of 100, maybe 250, but then those packets, when they're used, it reconciles every day from used ballots to what you still have left. Every day they have to reconcile.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any other member of the public wish to be heard? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Should I just speak
Could you
from
come up
here?
to the podium, please?
So thank you for allowing me to ask a question. So how can this board, if you approve this type of activity, assure us of free and fair elections? When someone uses the word certified with regard to any election equipment in this state, we need to understand what the word really certified really means, because none of the gear is certified, none of it. So the biggest question that I would have with regard to this issue is, how can you, if you approve this, how can you look me in the eye and say that there are no non-citizens voting?
Thank you, Mr. Casper.
Well, I would like an answer. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Would
for
that-
your-
okay.
Thank you for your comments. Any other members of the public wish to be heard on this item? Yes, sir. Would you identify yourself,
Yes.
please?
James Manship from Spotsylvania County. I was reading the Arizona federal case, Lake and Fincham versus Kerry Hobbs. And there was an expert witness, certified ethical hacker. And so he was there as an expert witness, but he was also a whistleblower. And he said that when he worked at a company that did the certification for Election Assistance Commission, that they were told that they couldn't go into certain parts of the computer. And they were also, the certifications were done or paid for by the companies that manufactured the things. So that to me was very significant testimony in a federal court under, sworn testimony that questions the viability of the certification regimen in any place, federal or Virginia. And I wonder how that's being addressed here in Virginia. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manship. Any other member of the public wish to be heard on this item?
Yes.
Would you identify yourself, please?
Hi, this is Jill Mobley. I'm from Fairfax County, and I have, thank you for your service. And I have two questions about the ballot on demand printers. If they're not certified, how are we crafting a testing procedure to evaluate them?
And your additional question?
How are these going to be secured at the locations they'll be used at? Since there's no information on how to certify them, how are we then to secure them?
What the important thing on the ballot on demand is that each vendor has a different kind of stock and a different kind of density on their marking for their timing marks. And the printers for that vendor have to be met. First of all the localities have to provide the stock that's specified with proprietary by that vendor. They then have to have the density of that mark meet the same standards of that vendor. In addition, all the ballot on demand systems have to produce that audit log that contains all the numbers of how many ballots were printed, if there was any errors like a jam or anything like that, and then and that reconciliation. So those are the standards that we're meeting. And I think, and you've got your localities who are very, our GRs are about the best in the country. I'll hold them up to everybody.
No, I agree. We have some fabulous general registrars in Virginia, but so it sounds like you're saying that a vendor is determining the standards and not a governing body or certifying organization. Do I understand that correctly?
Only the vendor stock, certified stock, and only the vendor certification on the density of the timing marks. Those have to be met in order for the scanners to read the ballots. And those are proprietary to the vendor. So the ballot on demand systems have to meet that standard. Otherwise, the ballots cannot be read by the scanners. That'll all be tested in this process.
Thank you, Ms. Mobley. Are there any other members of the public who wish to be heard on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion that the board approve the adoption of the proposed standards.
Could I say something?
Oh,
Yeah. So I'm sensitive to the concerns, but as I understand this, we're trying to solve a problem
Correct.
that if it gets properly solved, will help a lot on election night because those absentee ballots will go back to their home precincts eventually.
Those are, ballot on demands will be used in early voting. Yeah, they are absentees. I'm sorry. You're correct.
But the point is, this is something new that we have been told by the General Assembly that we need to do. And this is our effort to start doing that, and we can work on it and try to make it better. And I'm sensitive concerns about certifications and machines, but I think.
But can you imagine?
When does early voting start?
September 23rd. But just imagine, for example, like in Fairfax, if you've got 17 early voting locations and you have 264 different ballot styles, and you're going to have them lined up on a shelf in 264 in 17 different locations in order so someone can pull the right ballot. The ballot on demand system expedites that makes it efficient. A person comes in and their precinct is 261, ballot style 261 is printed, handed to them. The ballot software keeps track that it's been printed. The poll book keeps track it's been printed. The reconciliation keeps track. It's a very solid solution for an issue.
Further question? But we will have the ability, and we'll plan to track this and see how well it works and if there are irregularities.
Oh, sure.
So may I break with parliamentary procedure and make a motion after talking?
Feel free.
Okay. So I move the board approve the adoption of the proposed ballot on demand system certification standards effective immediately. Vendors for ballot on demand systems for use in Virginia must comply with these standards.
All right, is there a second to that motion? It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the adoption of the proposed standards. Secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon,
Aye.
Ms. Chang, Delegate Merrick's,
Aye.
Secretary Alvis Long, aye.
The motion is approved 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item of business is 3 localities applications for a split precinct waiver. Mr. Koski.
Chairman Brink, if I can just take a moment, this is Steve Koski. He is a new member of our team who's joined our policy department, and he comes to us from Michigan with some of our other folks on our team who are from Michigan. So we are thrilled to have him. He has gotten right to work and has proved very valuable already.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say, this is your first time in the barrel. So,
it is baptism by fire.
So, welcome, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. In your packets, you have 3 requests for a waiver to administer a split precinct. As you know, a precinct has to be wholly contained within a single congressional district, Senate district, House of Delegates district, and local election district. And further, there is a minimum number of registered voters required. For cities, it's 500 voters, and for counties, it's 100. If those minimums can't be met, the localities can submit the request to administer a split precinct. So you have here 3 requests. The first from Northumberland County. In your packet, you have a resolution and minutes from the board. They have 53 people in a portion of the town of Kilmarnock, and then the bulk of that is in Lancaster County. So they are requesting those 53 voters be in District 4. For Flavano County, you also have a resolution.
Let's go one by
Okay,
one.
we can do one. So we do not have a specific recommendation. The statutory requirements appear to be met for the split, and the board has the authority to grant the waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Koski. Do the members have any comments or questions of Mr. Koski about Northumberland County's application? Do any members of the public wish to be heard on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion that the request for a waiver from Northumberland be approved.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the waiver to administer a split precinct as requested by Northumberland County.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the request for a waiver from Northumberland County. Secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon, Ms. Chang, Delegate Merrick's,
Aye.
Secretary Elvis Long, aye.
The motion is approved 5-0. Second is Virginia Beach.
Yes, Virginia Beach, their request involves House Districts 95 and 100 and Senate Districts 20 and 22. So the split they're requesting would involve approximately 232 voters within House District 100 and Senate District 20. And so again, this falls within what appears to be allowable under the statute.
Members have any comments or questions of Mr. Koski? Does any member of the public wish to be heard? If not, I'll entertain a motion that the board approve the request for Virginia Beach to have a waiver of its split precinct. Delegate Merrick's.
I move the board approve the waiver to administer a split precinct as requested by Virginia Beach.
It's been moved that the board approve Virginia Beach's request. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. The secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon, Ms. Chang, Delegate Merrick's,
Aye.
Secretary Elvis Long, aye.
The motion is approved 5-0. And finally, we have Flavano County.
Yes, Flavano County, the town of Scottsville in House Districts 55 and 56. For this, there are approximately 22 voters that are impacted. So again, this appears to fall within what is allowable under the statute.
And Flavana has submitted all the requisite documentation.
Yes, they have submitted the board resolution and minutes, which are included in your packet.
Members have any comments or questions? Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this request? If not, I'll entertain a motion that the board approve Flavana County's request for a waiver.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the waiver to administer a split precinct as requested by Flavano County.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve Flavana County's request for a waiver. Secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon, Ms. Chang, Delegate Merrick,
Aye.
Secretary Elvis Long, aye.
Motion is approved 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Koski. You
Thank
did
you.
wonderfully.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Our next item of business is consideration of regulatory action and approval of a form related to the risk limiting audit process. Ms. Lawless, are you presenting on behalf of you and Ms. Hoyt-Stewart?
I am Chairman Brink. You're stuck with me. Good afternoon, Chairman Brink and members of the board. Passed during the 2022 General Assembly session, 24.2-671.2 made several changes to Virginia's risk limiting audit process. Among the changes, 24.2-6712D gives local electoral boards the option to request to conduct a risk limiting audit for contested races within that local electoral board's jurisdiction, and directs the SBE to promulgate regulations for submitting such request. The regulatory action before you, as well as the accompanying form, SBE 671.2D, work in tandem to meet the requirement of this new law. To highlight a few items about the regulation and adjacent form, the regulation requires a majority vote by the local SBE to approve a request for audit. We placed two conditions on the races: one, that the margin be greater than 1%, and two, that the number of estimated ballots to be sampled exceeds 15%. Upon granting a local electoral board's request, the SBE will grant an extension up to 2 weeks pursuant to 24.2-671 to meet which is to meet or ascertain the results of an election. It's also important to note that risk limiting audits are separate from recounts, which are governed by Chapter 8 of the Code of Virginia. Recounts may be conducted on races with margins not greater than 1%. Further, 24.2-671.2 states the contested race shall be selected to receive a risk limiting audit if the tabulation of the unofficial results for the contested race shows a difference of not more than 1% of the total vote cast for the top two candidates. Therefore, requesting a risk limiting audit does not take the place of a recount. So I want to be clear about that as you review this regulation. That being said, unless the board has any questions for me or members of the public, staff recommends that the board approve the proposed form SBE 671.2D and regulatory action 1 VAC 206080. A lot of numbers, but.
Thank you, Ms. Lawless. So as I understand it, the locality requests an RLA, it comes to the state board for its approval of the request, correct?
Correct. The state board will meet electronically on November 16th. I believe Franchelle has let you all know that that will be happening. The meeting will tentatively take place at 3 p.m. where you will virtually decide the races to audit. These will be included with the regular races and that will be selected for the RLA. So it's a compressed timeline with the new legislation. Risk limiting audits are required to be performed before state certification. So that's why you will have the emergency board meeting, well, not emergency, but electronic board meeting on November 16th.
November 16, and then certification is on what date?
It will be the first Monday in December, which I had written down without looking, I think it's the 5th?
Yeah.
The 5th. Thanks, Franchelle, the 5th.
Okay. Thank you. Members have any other comments, questions of Ms. Wallace?
Mr. Chairman, Rachel, so if it's less than 1%, it'd be like a recount. That's not.
Yeah, and then you would follow Chapter 8 and all the, bells and whistles that go along with that.
So they could request a risk limiting audit on anything over 1%.
Correct, sir.
On a contested race.
In their local jurisdiction.
And they pay for it.
No. Oh, yes, they do. I mean, they have to pay for the staffing of it. Right.
I was just curious. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Who paid for it.
I have a question.
One moment, please.
Yes.
One moment, please. Any other members of the board have any comments or questions of Ms. Wallace?
They'll have to pay the folks who are involved in conducting the audit. So, their audit board members, things like that. So, nothing, there are several different, this legislation is quite comprehensive, and next month you're going to be getting a manual which describes and outlines all the processes. We have a work group that's meeting actually next Tuesday to discuss this as well. Yeah, so correct, for local races.
Additional comments or questions from members? If not, does any member of the public wish to be heard on this item?
C. Carter, you can unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yes. My question did not have to do with a risk limiting audit. We only had 5 ballots out of 22,000 audited. I hardly call that even an audit. What is the procedure if a county wants to hand count ballots at the precinct upon poll closing, even if they use the machines, which they have to, but just to verify the count of the machine by hand counting?
I'm sorry, is your question related to this agenda item?
I guess it isn't. I guess
right.
I need to try to find that out a different ways.
All right, thank you. Members of the public who are present, would you come up, identify yourself?
Yes. Thank you. My name is Thomas Kasparic. I'm a voter in Loudoun County in Algonquian and the Lowe's Island precinct or district precinct. The risk limiting audit, according to the CEO of Verified Voting, who invented it, says it's garbage. It doesn't prove anything statistically, and in his resignation letter, he stated so. The folks who do the risk limiting audit on behalf of the US government in most states is a company called Voting Works. They are funded by a group of investors in Silicon Valley, most notably Mark Zuckerberg. So we would have some type of an audit of some sort that is not even related to reality. We have people who've participated in the risk limiting audit, and what this gentleman is firsthand knowledge, they use a paper scale to count the votes, a paper scale in the risk limiting audit. Does that make sense? I don't think it does. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Kasparic. Any other member of the public wish to be heard?
Jill Mobley.
Hi,
Please,
I have a comment about the risk.
Please, Ms. Mobley, I'd like to take the individuals who are here in person first, and then we'll get to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Darrell Bowe. I'm from Spotsylvania County. I'm a voter. I have a lot of concerns about the risk limit audit. Back after the 2020 election, November 3rd, the general election, the state did a risk limit audit. 1,372 ballots were pulled from the state to try and confirm the numbers statewide. Each day goes by, the citizens lose confidence in the electoral process. It is there. I was like most voters. I'd show up, show my ID, get my ballot, vote, and go home, watch the results. After the November 3rd, 2020 elections, I got involved, started searching, doing research. And the more I dug, the more I realized that there's no transparency to the system that we have. Every time we keep passing legislation, it seems like they bury it deeper and give us less transparency. We're asking for more transparency. A risk limit audit does not give us transparency. A full hand count, like the lady that mentioned earlier, by doing a full hand count after the machines have processed the ballots, if we had teams at each precinct ready to count the ballots by hand, in person, and load those up for viewable purposes to the County Board of Elections, if that's loaded up as a view purposes, each and every ballot, every citizen in the county would be able to go in and be able to conduct their own count of the numbers, and that would bring about more transparency into the system. Right now, we have no transparency. I got to rely on machines to tell me what the truth is or what the numbers are. I got to rely on everyone else to say it's certified, but yet we have no capability as citizens to determine whether it is truly the accurate numbers or not. Risk limit audits do not give me assurance that it is a clean, fair election, and it doesn't tell us the full numbers. A full count of all the ballots will do that, though. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to be heard on this item? Did Ms. Mobley want to be heard on this?
Yes, please. I sent in a memorandum to Chairman Brink as well as other public officials, including 11 points of concern, one of them being the cast vote record. In the Virginia Certification Manual, Appendices D and Appendices G, it requires that Virginians produce cast vote records in order to do a risk limiting audit. The compliance report, certification report from SLI Compliance stated that all machines in Virginia should be able to produce a cast vote record. That's pretty essential for a risk limiting audit. And when I contacted over 10 counties in Virginia to get a cast vote record, none of them seemed to have it or even know how to produce it. That's a serious concern.
If I may, Chairman Brink, there are two types of risk limiting audits. One is the ballot polling method, and the other one is the ballot comparison method. Virginia uses the ballot polling method, if you're using a cast vote record, that would be used with the ballot comparison method. So that's why we are not using cast vote records in risk limiting audits.
Thank you.
And my comment would be, why does SLI compliance state that the machines should be able, that the machines do produce it? And why does the certification manual state that they are required? If you do a risk limiting audit a certain way, it rewards cheaters, because if you have a larger margin, then you pull less ballots. So in a state of 4.4 million voters, we pulled, what, 1,400 votes last time? That's not a lot.
Thank you, Ms. Mobley. Any other member of the public wish to be heard on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion that the board approve the form and regulatory action on this matter. Delegate Merrick's.
I move that the board approve the proposed Form SBE 671.2D and regulatory action 1BAC 20-60-80.
It's been moved that is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the form and regulatory action on this matter. Secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon, Ms. Chang, Delegate Merrick's,
Aye.
Georgia Alvis Long, aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Lawless.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is a report on the investigation of Nottoway County. Mr. Leaf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board knows, it had unanimously requested the Office of the Attorney General to investigate various electoral practices in Nottoway County. As the board also knows, there has been a significant amount of public interest from members of the public who have appeared at multiple meetings since that initial request, and have also contacted our office and provided us with a fair amount of materials. We've had investigators review those materials, and we've looked into the matter to an extent. Once we became involved, however, we did learn that there was a active Virginia State Police investigation of basically all the matters that had brought to this board's attention, and there also has been a special prosecutor appointed to that. So I have had multiple discussions with that special prosecutor and the state police, and I'm prepared to give out both the state police special agents phone number, because I'm also was made aware this week there's certain people that want to give statements that feel they have not been given the opportunity to. And I can give both the contact information for the state police and the special prosecutor. But based upon the fact that there is, when I got involved on behalf of the request of the board, at the time, unbeknownst to me, this investigation was well underway. And again, the special prosecutor had already been appointed. It would be my recommendation that the board actually suspend its request of an investigation by the Office of the Attorney General at this point, pending the results by the special prosecutor and the state police.
For the public wish to be heard on this?
Ready for motion?
I am.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the State Board of Elections request our Attorney General's office to suspend their investigation of issues related to Nottoway County, pending results of the current ongoing state police and special, what's the term?
Prosecutor,
Special prosecutors investigation that is currently ongoing.
The motion is that the board requests that the Office of Attorney General suspend the case that it requested Nottoway County pending conclusion of the state police investigation. Is there a second?
Second.
seconded. Secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon, Ms. Chang, Delegate Merrick's.
Aye.
Secretary Elvis Long, aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, may I now please just give out that information? I know there were some citizens that still felt they had not been heard from. So I've spoken to both the state police and the special prosecutor, and they would be happy to hear from you. And you're still welcome to reach out to me if you feel that after doing that, after some period of time, we are working with both of those entities. We're involved in that investigation. We just not just send our investigators to do questioning that's already been done by the state police. Again, we view that as a duplication of effort. The special prosecutor, for those that don't know, is Chris Miller. He's with the Chesterfield County Commonwealth Attorney's Office. His office number is 748-1221. And the special, I'm sorry, it's Chris Miller with the Chesterfield County Commonwealth Attorney's Office. And the number there is 804-748-1221. That's who the special prosecutor is. And the special agent in charge, Special Agent Jeff Carter from the Bureau of Criminal Investigations Richmond office is in charge of the investigation. His office number is 804-609-5480. And they are both aware that I'm making this announcement. They know that some people feel they have information to give that has not been collected. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Members have any other comments or questions on this matter? All right. Again, thank you, Mr. Leaf. Before we go into closed session, we will have a chance for members of the public who wish to be heard on an item not on today's agenda. We will begin with members of the public who are here in person. First person on our list is Mr. Tom Kasparek.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate it very much. And I appreciate the headiness of the business that you have before you. The rights of the voters in this state are at stake for the business that you're conducting. We've done thousands of hours worth of investigation and research with some of the best forensics experts in the country. We don't represent a political party. We don't represent any people who are giving us money or any other political interests at all, other than the fact that we want our vote to count. We don't want our vote to be disenfranchised. But I can tell you, after thousands of hours worth of research and a small representative of that body of work is here, and a larger body of evidence is in an encrypted server where there are hundreds and hundreds of documents that are court-proof evidence, forensic quality information that will be investigated further. There's 4 ways that elections are being cheated right now. There's 4 swim lanes. But first I have a question for the board, and it's not a rhetorical question. Which artifact is the vote of record? Mr. Leaf? Anyone? I can offer 3 options. First of all, the official paper ballot, which is what the Code of Virginia says is the official ballot, the official paper ballot. Number 2 would be a scanned image of the paper ballot when you scan it into the scanner. Number 3 would be the data file from the scanned image. Which of the 3 is currently the vote of record in Virginia? Second important question that needs to be answered is who should count the vote of record? Political people? Foreign countries? Or the citizens So we have 4 swim lanes, and I'll cover these briefly. So we have extra voters in the voter rolls. We know that. Varus is a mess. Eric is giving their information on voters to the Democrats in an organization called CARE, which is funded by Zuckerberg. We have extra ballots. Every county is printing loads and loads of extra ballots, and then now we even get to have printed on demand, unlimited ballots. Those 2 things together equal a ballot stuffing enterprise in the state of Virginia. The 3rd swim lane is the poll book. The poll book, simply stated, gives the winning calculus.
Thank you, Mr. Kasparic.
Okay, thank you.
Next person on our list is James Manship. Welcome, Mr. Manship.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is James Manship. I was a Navy Special Duty Cryptology officer involved with electronic security in 1980 when I left and created a computer system for grassroots campaign management system. So I've been with political computers for a long time. But in 2011, I saw that there was a situation where Argonne National Laboratory said that an 8th grader with $28 of electronic parts could create a hacking device that could change the output of the touchscreen computer systems from a half-mile away. That shows you the vulnerability. Fortunately, in 2017, y'all voted to get rid of the DRE touchscreen computer systems. So I say that's step 1 in the right direction, and I thank you for doing that. I read your minutes for that, and I saw that Barbara Simmons, who is the president of Verified Voting, was one of the signatures of the appendices. And she's a Democrat, very active Democratic Alliance and so forth like that. But she said, after the 2000 presidential election, advocate against electronic voting machines, arguing that the United States should maintain a paper ballot system for elections to be secure. And that's one of the things I shared with you. I also shared with you a person who's testified before various states, Mark Cook, and he says that the more complex you have it, the more insecure it is, the less secure it is. And this absentee ballot system, print on demand, is descriptive of that. We say, okay, how can we do things? Well, France, which has a population of 65.5 million people, whereas California and Texas have 65.7, they have paper ballots manually counted. If France can do it, so can California, Texas, Virginia, and every other state of this union. So this is an article about how France does from Associated Press. From the Arizona text, there's a description of how they propose to do paper ballot counting in Arizona. This is in that same lawsuit. And then finally, I saw that, well, there's also a 2018 evaluation by the Center for American Progress, or Center for Progress, anyway. It's a Democrat affiliated thing. And they said Virginia should be applauded for its decision to switch to statewide paper ballot voting system in the 2017 gubernatorial elections. So y'all have made various things. And also in 24.2629 State Board Approval Process of Electronic Voting Machines, the board shall have the authority to investigate at its discretion any voting system certified in Virginia to ensure that it continues to meet standards certified or outlined in subsection C and D. And section C and D says,
wrap up, please.
Yeah, accurately counts, registers, reports, and potential for fraudulent use. So the Code of Virginia already provides the authority for you to make decisions to disqualify. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manship. Next is Paul Teal. Teal.
Thank you. I'd like to yield my time to Tom Kasparic, my 3 minutes.
No, I'm sorry. Each individual has the opportunity to make public comment.
I go to state education board meetings and they allow us to pass time on. So Anyway, it's a little different rule. So anyway, I'll take my time. I've been investigating this for a long time. I stood before the Senate Committee on what we call computers. They're not machines. We've done, as you heard, tons of investigation. These companies that own these computers are not United States companies. The guys that create the algorithms, which technically do all the counting that you want to have supposedly for an accurate election, those algorithms are controlled by people out of this country and by the people that put together these machines. I'll finish with, to me, as a salesman and a business owner, the greatest salesman in the world had to sell people in this country to use these machines. We can count. We're Americans. We've got plenty of moxie to count these votes with paper ballots. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Teal. Dennis Black.
Yes,
Welcome.
thank you. Thank you. Dennis Black here. I'm a mechanical engineer, by the way, and I want to emphasize the need to start calling these machines what they are. As a mechanical engineer, I know a machine from something else. Machines have cogs and levers and so on. These are computers. They're not machines. I also know a lot about computers. And the bottom line is that in this case, the voting computers are not transparent and they are not accurate demonstrably. So in light of what these other people have said so far, I would like to give an assignment to you as the committee. Two things. I have one document here that documents very concisely the French voting system, which has been without voting computers for about 40 years. Very, very easy to see. And it says machine voting has been allowed on an experimental basis, but the purchase of new machines has been frozen since 2008 due to security concerns. Only about 60 towns still use them out of 35,000 municipalities in France. The other one piece here, I encourage you to look at this website, which is the filing in Arizona by Kerry Lake and Mark Fincham about how in Arizona we need to remove the use of voting computers in light of precinct level counted hand ballots. So I'll leave one page of this. I don't have enough for everybody. I would ask that you copy them and you take a look at these two things and then consider using paper ballots at a precinct level and getting rid of non-secure, non-transparent computers going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Black.
Thank you.
Richard Ryan. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I am Richard Ryan from Loudoun County. Been a citizen of this fine Commonwealth since 1981 after I left the United States Navy. I have 29 years of naval service, active and reserve, and believe it or not, 34 years full-time work in the aerospace national security industry. Some of that is possible because I did 2 jobs for 23 years. Having said that, what you've heard from some other people here that a lot of citizens have gotten very involved in trying to figure out how this election system works. It's extremely complicated. It's very opaque, and there's lots of obfuscation that occurs. And worst of all, the majority of it is outsourced to third-party companies. You've already heard stated today earlier that some of this information is proprietary, so you can't hear about it. Really, proprietary. And that's the case everywhere you look. So, based on all the research that I've done, working with a lot of people in this Commonwealth and across this nation who had similar concerns, I want to state the following. Based on the data that I have seen, I would state that we should declare a state of emergency in our election system in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Those are serious words, obviously. I call upon you to immediately convene a public hearing to review the damning evidence that shows that we cannot conduct a secure and accurate election. We cannot do that. which therefore disenfranchises the voters of Virginia and violates our civil rights. I look forward to the public meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Susan Hoagie. Good to see you again, Ms. Hoagie.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman O'Bannon, members of the board, Commissioner Piper. Oh, God help me. I'm gonna go ahead and sit back down now because my time is finished. I'm so sorry. I apologize profusely. I do know the difference, Commissioner Beals. A little shorter probably too, but anyway, my apologies, please. Oh my gosh, with that great start, good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Susan Hogue, President of the Republican Women of Greater Richmond, and also a distressed poll watcher coming before you today with a request that has been created from my own experiences during the early in-person absentee voting period from last year's general election as a poll watcher. But first, I just want to take a quick minute to share some of those experiences that I hope will help show the reason for my request to you. During early voting last year, I volunteered as a poll watcher in 3 localities in the Richmond area. Following the requirements, I presented myself to each of the precinct's chiefs who were on duty and gave them a copy of my authorization letter. At 2 of the 3 locations where I had served, I was then told by the chiefs there that I had to sit in the designated chair, which was typically off to one side of the room, that I was not permitted to be at a station in the precinct so that I could be close enough to the voter check-in table to be able to at least hear and possibly see what was occurring. I was not allowed to look at the scan machine's ballot count numbers, even though no voters were in the proximity or even in the precinct at all. I was admonished by the registrar's supervisor via the chief for going outside to observe and hear what was occurring during curbside voter check-in. I was told that I had to go back inside and sit in that chair. Being someone who is respectful and polite, believe it or not, I did nicely mention on those occasions that I thought that I was in fact permitted to do those things, while at the same time, of course, being mindful not to disrupt or disturb any voter or any ongoing precinct activities as a poll watcher. I was told, no, I could not do that. One day, another quick story, I had planned to watch the process at the closing down of the scan machines after the polls closed for the day. And you know that process that puts the machines to sleep and locked down until the next morning. Well, that did not work out because a security guard came up to me and told me that he was directed to escort me out of the building, that I had to leave immediately and was not allowed to stay in the precinct after the polls had closed to watch any other activities involved with the overall process. Again, being a nice guy, I left with the guard. Since then, I've talked to a lot of other people who were also poll watchers last year and found out that they had similar experiences in those localities too.
Ms. Hogue, could you wrap up?
Yes, sir. I'll get right to my point. Talked to a lot of other smart people. My request to you all today is I'm asking if the board or the elect plans to send out an official guidance document to the general registrars to clarify that section of code 24.2-604.4 that deals with poll watchers in the voting precincts, where they can go, what they can see, and while they're there. And if not, would you please consider sending out such a guidance before early voting starts on September 23rd, as Commissioner Beals has already mentioned, in plenty of time for clarifying guidance to be shared with those who will be working in the polls. I would believe it would be very helpful and help ensure that the voting process goes smoothly and that no one is prohibited or suppressed from participating in it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Diana Lynn Wilkins Mitchell. Welcome.
Thank you. Months ago, I came here to ask you for your help. I begged you for your intervention and immediate assistance in order to preserve the integrity of our elections in Nottoway County. Unfortunately, Your lack of concern for our small community has given those who oppose free and fair elections an opportunity to corrupt the very system you represent. As an electoral board, it is your responsibility to ensure the elections proceed without being hindered, and yet you are failing. Nottoway County Registrar and the Electoral Board have not worked cohesively in almost 2 years. The police have been called once again to the Registrar's office. Strife, anger, mistrust, partisan politics, infecting our elections process. Lack of management, lack of knowledge, lack of training. This is what has been the result of your lack of involvement. Why are you sitting there? What was the reason you decided to take the position you currently hold? Do you believe that partisan politics has no place in the electoral process? Of the people, by the people, for the people. You hold that position for the people, not the Democrat people, not the Republican people, all the people. Partisan politics, race, ethnicity, sexual identity, none of these should be factors in determining capability and competency of a job. Why was our previous registrar fired for failing to do her duty and the current registrar not being held to the same standard? If you do not immediately do something to stop the corruption and intimidation tactics, you each will be responsible for failing to do your duties. Step up or step down, because your lack of interest is killing the will of the people and ruining the lives of anyone who holds dear this democracy and its many opportunities. Point of record, Mr. Leaf, I am not a political activist. I am a citizen. It is my right. No, it is my responsibility to be active in politics. Thank you.
Thank you. Darrell Bowe.
Mr. Chairman, thank you once again for the opportunity to speak with you for a moment. I, like many other citizens across the state and the nation, have spent countless hours of researching. My background is a veteran, a retired federal law enforcement officer. I spent a lot of years in the shadows working in counterterrorism, so standing in front of boards is not my thing. So I've been forced to come out of the shadows of retirement to understand what happened November 3rd, 2020. We're not going away. We're here. We're going to find out what the truth, and we want to get to the bottom of the truth. We look for facts and we look for evidence. This is just some of the data that we've researched over the past 17 months. The blue binder is some of your code of Virginia. I commend most of the registers. They are trying to do an impossible job that you have shackled them with the code, makes their work so difficult to perform. They're not the problem for the most part. Most of them are doing the hard task and nearly impossible opportunities. But however, in Spotsylvania County, the Board of Elections, who has now refused me to come to the meetings, they will not post their meetings on their website to let you know the date and time when they're having their public meetings. They avoid posting that now because they would rather not I show up and ask questions or voice my concerns about our elections. But aside from that, this binder here is the audits that's been conducted throughout the nation of the systems that we use, the computers to run our elections, the sworn testimonies in court of people who have worked for Pro VMV, one of the companies that certifies our computer systems that runs our elections. And his testimony is damning. It's damning testimony. And I would suggest each and every one of you go view it for yourselves and see what he's stating, the facts of the machines, the computer systems that run our elections. They're not certified. They're not able to do a full testing of the systems. And this is according to a sworn testimony in federal court. We have affidavits from other IT specialists testifying to the fact of the machine's vulnerabilities. These computer systems are vulnerable. You're shackling our ability as citizens to know whether there is no transparency to this program, this system that we use. There's no transparency. I have no trust, no confidence in it whatsoever. And I am involved personally because my children and my grandchildren will not look me in the eye and ask me, Dad, why are we now a communist country? Why have we gone the way of Venezuela? Venezuela fell as the result of stolen elections. And I'm telling you right now, if we do not get serious about our elections, bring transparency back to the public, we the people, we will lose a nation. And that's why I'm involved in this. It's not because I want to. I'd rather go off and enjoy my retirement. But because the future of this nation warrants it, we have to get involved, and I'm here to stay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bowe. Clarabelle Wheeler. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Commissioner Beal. I come today because I have a question and a reminder. As you all well know, all electoral board meetings and all state board meetings must follow the open records and open meeting laws. That means the public shall be entitled to attend, whether this is an electronic meeting. Sorry, you have people on Zoom today, or whether it's people in the room as local members. The Department of Elections has put out a notice to all the registrars and the electoral board members that there will be a WebEx meeting on the 31st of August from 10 to 11. I believe that's the right time. I am requesting that you, in order to be in compliance with the open records and open meetings, open that meeting to the public. You've heard a lot of people today speaking about transparency and the public's right to know. The law compels you to open that meeting. In order for the voters to understand the new regulations and the new procedures which the Department of Elections will roll out on August the 31st, 1 month ahead of the implementation of the law that goes into effect for same-day registration and voting October the 1st. Public has a lot to learn. The registrars and electoral boards have a lot to learn. And if we, as citizens, don't know the rules, we can't follow them. Therefore, it is imperative that you open this meeting to be in compliance with the laws, but most importantly, so that the people of Virginia will know what they're supposed to do regarding this new, completely different implementation of our voting and election system. Same-day registration and voting can be a very confusing opportunity. Elect has, I'm sure, spent many, many hours and days. I'm sure that the commissioner has done the very best that can possibly be done to create procedures that will be clear and readily implemented. But the people have the right to know what those procedures are, and they've only got a month to learn them. So I would ask you to open this meeting so that you will be in compliance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wheeler. Any other member of the public in person who wishes to be heard? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
One moment, please. Will you identify yourself, please?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Yolanda Stokes, and I am the former registrar from the city of Hopewell removed. Currently, I have become a candidate for office in the city of Hopewell. You don't know me, some of you may not, but I took over the office as general registrar a couple of years ago, I think back in 2017, 2018, and completed an election with less than 2 weeks going in. It's interesting to hear the comments from persons coming at you. There are a lot of things that you don't understand unless you hold the office of general registrar and go through the training that state board puts forth, which is pretty good, by the way. But I'm here because I still believe in fair and equitable elections. I found it quite interesting when I was running for office, the things that was happening in the Hopewell registrar's office. For instance, a current member of the electoral board was running for office. So I waited until the judge gave the order of removal. He was approved for the ballot, but he was removed till July the 11th, 2022. He gave his resignation to the electoral board, but the resignation should have been before the circuit court judge, you know that. Secondly, the members of the staff in the electoral board office was notarizing the statement of one of the candidates that's running. And I brought information for you, all right? And I'm gonna leave, I guess I can leave it with these folk, so that you can get a look at it. One of the mayor of Hopewell was shorted 6 votes. So I went in and I FOIA'd her petitions. She shouldn't have been shorted 6 votes. And when they took the votes, they took from me, but I did make the ballot. I'm supposed to have made the ballot. I haven't gotten the letter yet. But at any rate, when they got the letter, when I got the letter and said I had, and I knew to get the current registered voters list for the area I was running in. I shouldn't have lost not one. Each of those persons was registered, but I supervised those 2 people. And had I continued my term, those 2 people would not have been there. There are skills that a registrar should have. A lot of the registrars that I met don't have those skills. I type 125 words a minute, and I'm a certified paralegal. So the rules that come forth to me, I do get a chance to have a reading, and I made 98 and above. And I was trained by the former and the late Homer Ladis, who was an attorney. So I got a chance to work with the rules, and I hear people talking about 24.2 et cetera. But there's also an administrative code that goes with it that tells you who qualifies for the budget, how to qualify, and how notaries are done. The notarizations that was given to this person should not have been given. I went online and the comment report has not been done, so he shouldn't have been qualified for the ballot. Asking that you all would take this time to send representatives to the Hopewell office during this election period so that we can have a fair opportunity at the polls. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
And I'll leave this information because this one concerns an electoral board member. That's politicking. Here you are. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Be glad it continues. Thanks.
Do we have people who wish to comment electronically? Okay, Diana Hashmi.
Ms. Diana Hashmi?
Hello to everyone. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Thank you. My question is for Chairman Brink. After listening this afternoon, I think my question should be an easy one. I served as a poll watcher in the 2020 election and was given by a chair at a Fairfax County polling precinct a sticker to wear on my shirt as a poll watcher. And it stated in red, Republican authorized representative. It was my first time serving as a poll watcher, and I did as the Fairfax County chair of the polling precinct instructed, even though I found it quite surprising. I expected the chair knew what was right and wrong. I had already experienced that the chair was not interested in my questions, and I figured I would find out in time whether it should have been given to a poll watcher to wear. I want to know for the next time, and I want others to know. I attended a Fairfax County Electoral Board meeting in June, and I asked the board, but they didn't know of any guidance. And they called up Ravi Udeshi, the election office manager, but he didn't know either. He said he would check into it, and he couldn't find any guidance, so he suggested I refer to the state. My question is, I would like to know if the board would prepare guidance to the GRs to give the poll watchers neutral IDs that cannot identify the authorized party representative by party name on the front of a tag or sticker. Chairman Brink, would you be able to tell me whether that would be possible, please?
Do you have any additional comments?
No, that's it. Just
All right.
that question.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hashmi. Ann Gregorian.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Ann Gregorian. I'm a resident of Virginia. I'm a registered voter, and I'm also an officer of election. I recently submitted to the governor, the Secretary of Administration, the Commissioner of Elections, and the Chairman of the State Board of Elections a 6-page document regarding elect's failure to follow the law as mandated under SB 1077. If you've read my letter, you will know why I am speaking today. I apologize for the length of that document, but I felt it was important to include all possible details so that you would all fully understand my position and my concerns. I listened as this body praised the work of the department under the tenure of prior Commissioner Mr. Piper during his last appearance at this board. He and the board spoke of his extreme success in promoting election integrity and of the processes implemented to ensure that elections in Virginia were conducted as directed by law. In my opinion, what I have found is contrary to this narrative. It is my belief that under his tenure, unelected officials at the Department of Elections made up their own rules and discarded the provisions of this law as enacted. Elect appears to have acted as a shadow legislature by effectively rescinding a law without the consent of the Virginia General Assembly. In 2018 or before, the Department of Elections unilaterally made the decision to stop including the provisions of SB 1077 in the list maintenance tasks as mandated by law. Elect disparaged the process as unusable and failed to conduct required and necessary training. Public reports, communications obtained under FOIA, and my own communications with Elect confirm that Elect has continually misinformed the public and the Virginia General Assembly on the utility of this law since its initial passage. Additionally, from April 2020 to August 2022, the Virginia Department of Motor Vehicles stopped sending to the Department of Elections non-citizen document numbers as required by Virginia Code 46.2-328.1, subsection E. Just as egregious as DMV's errant omission of this data is Elect's failure for over 2 years to object that the data was missing. The timeline and greater details of these events are provided in the demand for compliance letter that I submitted to the chair of this board on August 5th. Commissioner Beals has recently reached out to update me on this issue. She said the attention I have drawn to the SAFE program for list maintenance has prompted a closer look at what is required under this law and what Elect must do to fully implement and use this law as intended. I appreciate the Commissioner's response and her actions thus far to correct the situation. So that the public might be informed of the progress of Elect, I would request that a report or update on this subject be included on the agenda for the next State Board of Elections meeting. Again, I would like to thank Commissioner Beals for her efforts to address my concerns, and I thank the board for the opportunity to speak today.
Ms. Gregorian. Are there any other members of the public who wish to be heard on a matter not on the agenda?
Howard Hempenius.
Yes, Barbara Lee.
This is Howard, if you'd like me to go ahead.
Yes, I have a question.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Give me one moment. Mr. Howard is going to go first, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Board. My name's Howard Hempenius. I'm a resident of Loudoun County and obviously a voter there. The integrity of the absentee voting process is critical to ensure election integrity. My concern today is that 2 companies, Democracy Works and i3 Logics, currently perform absentee ballot tracking within the state of Virginia. Democracy Works offers a service called Ballot Scout, and iLogic offers either a product called Ballot Tracks or actually owns a company that offers it. It's not clear. My second point is there doesn't appear to be any statutory or regulatory authority for these services. I understand that Select and the board for the use of the 2020 election. And actually, the state still has a contract with Democracy Works right now. These companies are opaque. Insight on the security and use of absentee ballot, voter, and voting information is unknown. Contract arrangement varied. The Virginia Information Technology Agency, acting as an agent for Elect, procures Ballot Scout software and service using a contract with SHI Incorporated. Counties must execute individual contracts directly with iLogix 3, we believe. Who is ensuring that critical ballot voting information is being protected? You know how the responsibility works. If everyone is responsible, no one is. I once had a job where I had two bosses on an org chart. It was great. I felt like I had an incredible amount of freedom. Next point, there is no limit on the related services that these companies can offer using the information that they have collected. If they create user accounts or voter accounts, if they collect information from the information from the post office, from Ballot, or can merge information. Next point, the state could provide similar tracking service using information from the United States Postal Service directly. It would take some to do it, but if you're going to only base your service on the information that's available from the post office, the state could do that. My last question is, how can the public be assured that absentee ballot voting information is being used to improve voting integrity? Thank you. Is anybody there?
Additional speakers?
Barbara Lee?
Ms. Barbara Lee.
Okay, thank you so much. I get on this webinar because the question still hangs in the air. Decision on same-day voting registration. Are you going to be allowed to vote that same day, or you're going to have to use a provisional ballot? And for what purpose is the provisional ballot if you're standing there voting, registering the same day? My question is, why are we doing this in a way that's going to make it difficult for people?
Any additional comments? Thank you.
Next, I have Mr. Ned Jones.
Well, I'll be damned.
Yeah, hi. My official name's James. It shows up as Ned. I'm from Henrico County. I have a question. I hope that someone has an answer. Right after redistricting, the state sent out a new voter registration card to everyone on the rolls. And my question is, how many of those are returned as undeliverable? I asked my registrar, and he said he had no idea that there were undeliverables that were returned, but he didn't know how many. Do we have a handle on how many of those registration cards were returned as undeliverable?
Do you have any additional comments, Mr. Jones?
No. Does anybody have an answer?
Thank you.
Next, we have Laurie Jones.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Hello?
Yes, Ms. Jones.
Okay, great, thank you. I also have two questions, and it sounds like you're not answering questions, but my first had to do with how and when voters are going to receive notice about their new precinct changes due to the redistricting. Our county, I'm in Albemarle County, and I know our registrar is working on that, but doesn't know if the state is sending that out. I know that information has to be sent by law 15 days before elections, and we haven't seen anything in our county. And then the second was to ask, plead, beg for the regulations and procedures regarding same-day registration. It's a little confusing because at the beginning of the agenda, we had, and I'm sorry, I don't know her name, but someone talk about registration ending in October when that is actually not the case. Registration can be up to on the same day of voting. But I know our Board of Electors is not sure how this is all going to work, the process for it. So I'm really hopeful that that will be turned in very quickly, that the board will issue some kind of procedures so that we understand how it's going to work. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have Karen Minio.
Thank you. Again, my name is Karen Minio. I am from Loudoun County, and I find it upsetting that in your summary of strategic goals, that your #1 goal is to maintain a diverse and well-trained workforce by implementing DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's really sad in light of all the talk needing for transparent elections. There is a need to help give confidence back to the people on the election processes. Goal #2 is to improve confidence. I would like to suggest, and I mean strongly suggest, that you switch those. Also, in light of all the previous comments, I would also like to ask the board to secure all election materials from the 2020 and 2021 elections, as there is still much more information that is needed to be learned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Minio.
Next, I have Thomas Reynolds.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm Tom Reynolds. I'm a registered voter in Nottoway County. Although from some things I know, I probably ought to go online to elect and verify that I'm active. But with all the commonality that my county has with other localities and the election process problems, somebody might say that I'm from Sussex, Charlotte, Charles City County, Richmond, Hopewell, or Lynchburg, because we've all got very similar problems. It is not, I repeat, it is not simply a problem in Nottoway County. As to the decision to suspend the investigation into wrongdoing, that's fine. That's your decision. That is your job. However, I have spoken to SAC Jeff Carter, and that was 6 months ago, and he still has not contacted anybody who's in the know, anybody who was there at the time of the allegations, and who might have facts that would be due presentation. There's a party playbook being used to take over registrars' offices, not only in Nottoway County, but in many rural counties. That's not the purpose of the registrar's office. The purpose is for every vote to count, every voter to be heard, every citizen's voice and written comment to be considered where local boards have authority to make decisions. I'll also say I was very happy to hear Commissioner Beals make the statement that officers of election were always needed, that officers of election should be allowed to attend training, and that officers of election were the critical part of any election process. We need more good officers of election. Unfortunately, sometimes they're turned down, for example, because they're a white Republican female. I think that the board and the commissioner need to do more to ensure that elections move back to the arena that they were intended to be in. I personally have two choices here: fight or flight. I've prayed about the issues and have decided to follow the word of the Lord and raise my sword. I will pray. I will expose evil. I will continue to fight for what is right and just for all. I may lose my official seat on the Nottoway County Board of Elections. I will most certainly be vilified in local media and social media. I may be sued. I may have to spend tens of thousands of dollars of my own money on attorney's fees to defend myself, simply for trying to follow our laws. But I will not quit. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Are there additional members of the public who wish to be heard?
I have Mr. Chris Page.
Hello, can you hear me?
Mr. Page?
How you doing, Chairman? Nice to see you again. Look, I don't have any prepared remarks, but there's a couple things I wanted to touch on. Number one, I wanted to piggyback off what Ms. Wheeler said. I don't think electoral board meeting is a public meeting. I mean, I don't think it's a meeting. I think it's a training session, but I do support that meeting being open to the public. As long as we're not talking about cybersecurity or any sensitive information, I do encourage the board to make that public. I think the public has an interest in learning more about elections, so I hope that you do consider that. With the Nottoway County issue, you know, I want to let the board know, I started last year as a citizen who wanted to hold the government accountable for FOIA violations that I noticed not only in our elections office, but local government. And I believe that I did that. And it was upon that work that the Republican Party asked me to serve as chair of the electoral board. And they loved my work until I decided to vote a way that they didn't like. I voted to remove the registrar that was in the office, and I believe for good cause. And now the same thing that's happened to me, where I get tarnished afterwards and all these things accused against me, they do the same thing to you today, that you didn't vote the way they wanted and make immediate public spectacle and action against Nottoway County. You sent it over to the state to continue their investigation with their investigating agencies, and yet they come and tarnish your name for not doing something that you're really doing the same decision of allowing the investigation to continue. I rarely agree with Mr. Reynolds, but I will say that the Nottoway Electoral Board last year sent a lot of things over to the Commonwealth Attorney and created a special prosecutor for several different issues. I have not been reached out to by any investigating agency, and nor have any of my former board members either. I think that in order to have an open, fair, and active investigation, that all sides need to be talked to. But I believe in the end, the electoral board will be proven to have done the correct thing. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Additional speakers?
Next, I have May Tucker.
Ms. Tucker?
Ms. Tucker?
Additional speakers?
I have Barbara Andes.
Ms. Andes?
Hello. I apologize for speaking on an item that was earlier in the agenda. I had difficulty, and I also was called on after the council or the committee took a vote. Anyway, I wasn't here when you called on me. I'll make it in the general comments here. And it's regarding item 5B, but it is a broader comment too, about the behavior of candidates on election day. And in this case, it was primary day. I am disappointed. I really didn't intend to speak at the meeting. I thought my official complaint that I submitted was clear enough that I found the infraction of the Volleson for Roanoke passing out the sample ballots during a primary as a Democrat and marking 3 names of 4 Democrats that were in the primary egregious. But that the committee today voted to call that a minor infraction and only charge the candidate and his campaign committee $50, I believe opens a door for, in the future, candidates seeing that as a great way to spend money. So I hope that should you not be able to revisit your decision today, that it was really a major infraction of a third-time candidate in this case, who knew the rules and knows the rules, both as a party and as a breaking state law, staking the code. I believe that going forward, any candidate that does this on primary day or election day passes out sample ballots without the proper authorization should be considered that it is with, and I'm not sure the legal term, but it's intentional, with intent, knowing they're breaking the law. I honestly think that it's a $50 fine plus the cost of printing how many sample ballots without the right authorization is a pretty low expenditure to potentially change the outcome of an election. And I was disappointed in today's vote, but I hope going forward, you will hold all candidates responsible for following the state law, and that this infraction on any candidate's part going forward would be seen immediately as intentional, knowingly breaking state law, and give them a maximum penalty, and also make it, because in this case, we have not created any sense of concern on a candidate's part that they will not be able to afford the fines.
Ms. Andes, can you wrap up, please?
Thank you very much. That's all.
Are there any additional speakers?
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, would you identify yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Scott Minio and I'm calling in from Loudoun County, Virginia. Apologize for being a little bit late to the meeting. So for the last couple of years, we've been fighting critical race theory, not to mention other things in this county. You know, my organization has led the charge in this fight, and you see critical race theory across the entire country. Why is it being injected into into our election process through diversity, equity, and inclusion? That would be question number one. That's really concerning. We have a lot of concerns centered around election integrity to begin with, but now we're injecting critical race theory or elements of critical race theory into this discussion. It would be very interesting to understand how deeply embedded this is, and where's the guidance that what guidance did the state get to put this information in there? It has nothing to do with elections. In fact, if anything else, what we're doing, the state that is setting up for additional fraud using CRT, diversity, equity, and inclusion as the vehicle to commit this fraud. And this would be new fraud that people have not heard of. There's been a lot of people focused on election integrity, and there's been a lot of people focused on critical race theory and education. Now the two worlds collide, and both worlds are going to have to get on board and understand each other, because this is not a good thing. If we thought, counting, dead people voting or violations of oath of ballots was a problem, or the machines, you inject critical race theory into the election process, you're going to compound your problems tenfold. And most people won't even understand that. That is a significant problem. I don't know who evaluated this or how long this has been in the making, but it needs to be reconsidered. I'm going to look at this heavily, personally, because I'm not overly, haven't been overly involved in election integrity, but I'm going to make it a special priority to look into this, because this is not good. This is not good for our Constitution. This is not good for our voting process. And I would love to understand how this got injected into the process. So again, my name is Scott Minio with Loudoun in Loudoun County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minio. Are there any additional speakers? All right.
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
I still didn't get an answer from my question as to same day voter registration and how do people vote? How's that vote being going to be counted?
Thank you, Ms. Lee. We've heard from you previously.
Yes, and
All right, that concludes our public comment section. With that, I will entertain a motion that the board go into closed session.
Mr. Chairman,
Delegate Merrick's.
pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A7, I move that the board go into closed session for the purpose of discussing pending and threatened litigation. In accordance with Section 2.2-3712F, Susan Bills, Commissioner of Elections, Joshua Leaf of the Office of Attorney General, and Lynn McDermott, Secretary of Administration, will attend the closed session because their presence will reasonably aid the board in its consideration of the subject of the meeting.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board go into closed session. Will the secretary call the roll?
Yes. Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon, Ms. Chang, Delegate Merrick's,
Aye.
Secretary Elvis Long, aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Chairman,
Dr. O'Bannon.
I move to reconvene the meeting in open session and take a roll call vote certifying that to the best of each member's knowledge, only such public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard or discussed by the State Board of Elections.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. The secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chairman O'Bannon,
Aye.
Ms. Chang, Delegate Merrick's,
Aye.
Secretary Elvis Long, aye.
The motion passes 5-0. There being no more business to come before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Meeting is adjourned.
Yes.